everyone, welcome to your first lecture. It's going to be kind of a mini lecture. As I stated kind of in that introduction to the syllabus, I changed the course schedule a little bit because we had a section that was added at the last second, and I'm pretty sure there are not enough textbooks to go around. So I'm giving people kind of a little bit of extra time this week to get their textbook. So I'm just going to really briefly give you kind of an introduction to California geography, kind of mostly physical geography, and I'll tell you what that is in a second. But that is going to kind of play into the rest of what we're going to talk about this semester. So mostly when people think about geography, they think about maps. We're certainly going to talk about maps this semester. We're going to look at some maps this semester. Maps are a really useful tool. But generally, as geographers, we're kind of very broadly concerned with why things are where they are and how that location kind of allows things to be interconnected or disconnected. So we're going to talk a lot about things like migration, people coming into California. We're going to talk about why people lived in certain places based upon the resources available to them. And if you've taken a geography class, hopefully you've taken a geography class at some point. You might have taken a geography class at Cal State San Marcos or another college level geography class. I also teach physical geography and I teach world regional geography. Physical geography, if you're taking my class this semester or have taken it in the past, we talk about landforms and rocks and minerals and water and weather and climate, plants and animals and soil, a wide variety of things. How do volcanoes work? Why, where do hurricanes form and why? And so the physical side of geography is considered a natural science. The cultural side of geography, which looks at things like population, economic activities, languages, religions, political systems, settlements, and food, this is a social science, not any less of a science. I don't like the term hard science to talk about natural science because anybody who does social science knows that it is a hard science for sure. But we are going to look at in this class, or if you're taking my world regional geography class as well, kind of the interplay between these two, the physical and the cultural geography. This class is going to focus a little bit more on the cultural, but I'm going to introduce some of the kind of very briefly the unique physical geography of California, and you're going to have to kind of relate to that physical geography throughout the semester. So the physical geography of California, right? California's physical geography played a strong role in its settlement, and still does today. Even with, our ability to kind of live in some pretty inhospitable climates and wherever we want, if most of the population of California is kind of in a few select areas. There's people who live throughout the entire state, but we have concentrations of people in certain areas. And there's a couple reasons for that. The first one is the rugged terrain, right? We have mountains in California. We also have deserts and a lack of water in a lot of areas. Right, now we can kind of move water around where we need it, sometimes not very efficiently, often not very efficiently. We've gone through a period of drought recently, a pretty bad period of drought. But, generally speaking, when people, especially pre-European contact, Native Americans in California, there are still Native Americans in California, I want to just be clear about that, but pre-contact, people are living near resources, and especially water in California is particularly important. Later on in the semester, we're going to talk about water in LA and water in San Francisco and how much of an impact that had on the formation of those cities, the ability to bring a consistent water supply there. Right? We have a pretty dry climate in a lot of areas, right? We have this whole southern desert, right? Very hot and dry areas. We have these moister, wetter areas, but generally speaking, we do not get very much precipitation here in Southern California. Even when you get up into the hills in San Diego County and you get more rain, it's not a particular lot of rain. And on the coast, we're talking 10 to 15 inches a year, which is not not very much at all. And out in the desert, we're talking about under 5. So you can imagine before we're able to kind of move water around everywhere, that's really going to kind of affect where we're going to live, right? And so you can see here, this is a population map. This is based on the 2000 census, but the population distribution is still about the same, right? We are concentrated population-wise in very few areas. The Bay Area, Southern California, LA in particular, and San Diego, and then we have people throughout the Central Valley where we grow an awful lot of food. So you can see how that physical geography kind of affects where people are living, right? So again, we have these several mountain regions, including the Cascades and the Sierra Nevadas, Lassen Peak, which is an active volcano. So again, coastal mountains, then we have a valley, Sacramento Valley and the San Joaquin Valley, and then another set of mountains. Not this kind of, flat, easy to travel over topography. And these mountains really affect rain. You don't have to know a ton about this for this class, but if you're in my physical geography class, if you are, you're going to learn all about the windward and the leeward side of the mountain and which side is rainy and which side is dry. But generally speaking, when we have mountains, we have a dry side and we have a wet side. So we have moist air that comes in. As that air rises and it cools off, it condenses and then it rains. And what happens is because all the rain falls on this side of the mountain, this side is completely dry. And so if you have driven over the mountains, you can see this happen, right? You're going up the mountain. In San Diego County, you drive up to Julian, and there's, a lot more trees, and there's snow up there in the winter, and then you get to the other side, and you're in the desert. So we have this effect pretty dramatically in California. And so our rivers, right, we also have quite a few rivers. Rivers, generally speaking, they have to begin at a higher elevation. But these rivers are pretty important. We get most of our water in San Diego from the Colorado River, right, which is all the way over here. We get it from a variety of places. Here's the San Joaquin River. But generally speaking, we take water out of rivers kind of less optimally than we should. But these rivers and also groundwater has kind of allowed us to grow a ton of food in California, particularly in the Central Valley, right? We have this water availability, and we have climate year-round. You can grow crops year-round here. I grew up in Connecticut. Some of you might have grown up in places that were less kind of year-round hospitable. And so in Connecticut, if I bought a tomato in February, it came probably from either outside of the country or in California, was picked really early, made its way all over there, was pretty terrible. Your fruit and vegetable choices in a cold weather place, they look like normal fruits and vegetables, but because they were picked so early and they had to travel so far, they're not necessarily very good. But we can grow a ton of food throughout the Central Valley in California. And then again, we have our deserts, right? This is Death Valley. If you've ever been to Death Valley, you know just how inhospitable it can be. So you can imagine when people are coming to California, not a lot of people are living in deserts. And then, excuse me, I don't know why that animation is messed up. We also have something called the Great Basin, which is something called an endorheic basin, which you would learn a lot about in a physical geography class. But the idea is that in the Great Basin, all of the precipitation that falls within the Great Basin does not make its way to the ocean. And so the reason that the ocean is salty is because as it rains, that rainwater picks up salts and minerals from the ground. It carries them through rivers out into the ocean, and that's where they end up. They stay there. They have nowhere to go. The same thing happens in the Great Basin, except it doesn't go into the ocean. So what you wind up is bodies of water in the Great Basin that are getting increasingly salty. So that is why we have the Great Salt Lake in the Great Basin. And so when we talk about next time, in the next module, we'll talk about Great Basin tribes. You know, they had to deal with resources that were a little bit different than some of the other areas of California. And the Great Basin extends all the way out. Just a part of it is in California. And then lastly, we have coastal California, which this class is being taught in San Marcos, but we're probably most, or at least those of us who grew up outside of California, when we think of California, this is what we're thinking of, right? We're thinking of the coasts and the beaches. So when we talk next time about Native Americans, in particular, we're going to talk about Native Americans pre-European contact. Right, a lot of the ways in which people lived and the food that they ate was very much based upon the physical geography and where they were. So that is going to be your whole lecture for this time. Again, it's a short lecture because I'm waiting for you guys to get that textbook. You need to have the textbook by the next module. If it is looking like you're not going to be able to get that textbook for the next module, please email me. I will try to have somebody scan in and post, which I'm technically not allowed to do. I'd like to avoid doing it if I can, but the textbook is available online as well on Amazon, I believe. It's not particularly expensive, so make sure that you get it.